You've probably heard the claim that hypersonic missiles make aircraft carriers obsolete. They're said to fly at over Mach 5, maneuver at will, and punch through any defense system. But here's the twist. The very physics behind that speed also cripples them with extreme heat, drag, and limited maneuverability. Navies aren't facing a superweapon. They're facing a weapon with vulnerabilities few talk about. So are these missiles really game changers? Or are they the most overhyped weapons of our time? Stick here, because the truth is more surprising than the hype. Everyone hears that hypersonic missiles would turn billion-dollar carriers into little more than floating coffins. The image is simple and terrifying. Unstoppable weapons crashing into ships at thousands of miles per hour. But the physics behind these missiles tells a story that is darker, stranger, and far less predictable than the headlines suggest. A true hypersonic weapon is defined by three main traits. First is speed, Mach 5 and beyond, meaning 5 times the speed of sound or more. Second is altitude. Unlike ballistic missiles that arc into space, these often remain in the thicker layers of the atmosphere. Third is maneuverability. They are designed to steer during flight rather than follow a clean ballistic curve. On paper, this combination creates something both swift and difficult to track. That image feeds the belief that a carrier group at sea is helpless once one of these weapons is launched. Media stories latch onto this sense of inevitability. They describe gliders plunging toward ships, weaving around defenses, and crashing home with no warning. Television graphics show computer animations of sleek missiles zigzagging down through the clouds, while destroyers below fire useless bursts into empty air. The tone is clear. Naval warfare, as we know it, is already over. But this picture leaves out the brutal truth about moving at hypersonic speeds through an atmosphere that never cooperates. At Mach 5 or faster, air does not push gently against a missile's surface. It slams into it. The heat built up is closer to what a spacecraft faces when it re-enters the atmosphere from orbit. Surfaces glow, plasma envelopes the nose, and the outer shell strains under temperatures high enough to weaken metals and test even advanced ceramics. This heating is not a side effect. It is a full physical assault on the missile's structure. Every millisecond of its flight, think about the stress of that environment. Sharp turns meant to dodge interceptors don't just challenge guidance computers, they rip at the missile itself. Materials flex, coatings ablate, and the more aggressive the maneuver, the greater the chance of failure before a target is ever reached. The very advantage of being maneuverable becomes an engineering battle against breakup in flight. Then comes drag, the hidden tax on speed. Flying low keeps the missile harder to track with ground-based radar. But at that altitude, thick air resists every inch of forward motion. Energy drains faster, ranges shrink, and designs that look terrifying on paper can in practice travel shorter distances than slower traditional missiles. The paradox is sharp. As speed goes up, efficient long-range performance goes down. Even the idea of invisibility collapses under closer examination. When a hypersonic weapon launches, the heat generated is enormous. Satellites scanning the Earth in infrared detect the glowing plume easily. Long before it reaches a battle group, its path lights up detectors across space. What was promoted as ghost-like and untraceable leaves, flaming footprints stretching thousands of miles. The air itself becomes a signal that says, a missile is coming. Once this reality is understood, the myth of the unstoppable, undetectable hypersonic weapon begins to crack wide open. Instead of ghost weapons vanishing into the sky, they appear as massive beacons, visible across multiple platforms. They still move frighteningly fast, but they do not arrive without warning or weakness. And that changes the conversation completely. If they are not perfect assassins of carriers, then the critical question is not their speed, but how navies decide to adjust their defenses in response. If the missile itself isn't rewriting the rules of naval warfare, the real shock comes from how navies are adapting to face it. Instead of treating hypersonics as a doomsday weapon that ends the carrier era, the United States and its partners are busy rewriting playbooks, building layered defenses, and shifting strategies in ways that make fleets more resilient than ever before. The story is not about missiles alone. It is about how nations respond when fear collides with innovation. The United States has poured resources into a network of satellites armed with infrared sensors that can spot a missile launch almost instantly. These sensors pick up the enormous heat signature created when a hypersonic vehicle begins its flight, tracking it in real time and feeding data back to interceptors on the ground, at sea, or in the air. That top layer acts like an early warning net spread across the globe, giving commanders more time to line up their defenses rather than scrambling blindly at the last minute. Alongside this, rapid interceptor systems are being developed to reach out, lock on, and destroy incoming threats before they close the distance. Despite these measures, the fear remains loud. Beijing promotes its DF-17 glider as a carrier killer, while Moscow points to its Zircon cruise missile as proof it can punch through U.S. naval dominance. Each weapon is paraded as proof that surface fleets are relics waiting to be sunk. Commentators line up to argue that carriers are nothing more than giant targets. The constant repetition of these claims fuels a larger narrative that naval power projection from carriers is in decline. Yet those same carriers still sail at the center of U.S. strike groups. They remain the ultimate tool for projecting force, whether through airstrikes, humanitarian missions, or deterrence patrols. Their actual defenses are not static. Combat systems like Aegis are receiving regular updates designed for the speed and altitude of hypersonics, while interceptors, such as the SM-6, are tailored to engage fast-moving targets across different layers of the atmosphere. Far from sitting helpless, carriers are surrounded by ships, submarines, and aircraft, all tied into a common defensive grid that grows sharper every year. What makes these efforts stand out is how allies are pulling in the same direction. The United Kingdom is testing advanced propulsion and defense technologies on land ranges to prepare for shipboard integration. Japan is working on defense architecture aimed directly at high-speed aerial threats, folding it into its existing alliance with the United States. Across the Atlantic, NATO surveillance networks are linking satellites, ground radars, and maritime patrol aircraft into a constant watch system that strips away the secrecy of any incoming weapon. This collaborative shield narrows the gap a hypersonic missile must slip through. On a strategic level, navies are making sure it's not just better sensors and interceptors that protect them. They are also changing doctrines. Instead of clustering forces tightly around a carrier, dispersion lowers the risk of mass casualties and forces an enemy to spread its fire. Deception tactics, including decoys and electronic disruption, make tracking real targets more difficult. Command networks are being hardened so that even if one ship is hit, leadership and coordination remain intact. The point is clear. Navies are blending technological fixes with tactical ones, ensuring no single strike can paralyze an entire fleet. That is where the true shift lies. Hypersonic missiles, for all their speed, are simply driving faster adaptation. Navies are becoming more agile, more connected, and harder to corner. They are not watching carriers fade into obsolescence. They are using the threat to make their forces even sharper. What looks like the end of one era is actually the catalyst for another. Fleets designed to think and respond faster than the weapons aimed at them. And that circles back to the real question. If the danger was never just the missile itself, what we are really watching is how entire nations choose to react to uncertainty on the battlefield. Hypersonic missiles may look like the final word in military technology, but they don't change everything. What they really do is accelerate how navies adapt. Instead of wiping carriers from the seas, they push fleets to upgrade sensors, create tighter defense networks, and rethink how they operate in combat. That means the real story isn't hype, it's adaptation. Fear should not drive the conversation. Innovation should. The future of naval warfare won't be won by the nation that builds the fastest missile. It will be decided by who can think faster, adjust quicker, and turn uncertainty into advantage.